your video. We'd also ask that you update your name in the Zoom to include your preferred name, and if you're comfortable, also your pronouns. The way you do that is you can click the three dots in the top right of your little video box, and then that'll let you edit your name. All right, your microphones are turned off to start with, and so you'll need to unmute to speak. If you're joining by phone, you'll do that by pressing *6. You can also use non-verbal feedback options, and which you can find under the reactions button. And that's also where you can find a button to raise your hand. And so we'll make use of that when we open it up for discussion at various points along the presentation. If you called into the meeting, you will raise your hand by pressing *9. I'm just going to give just a moment to allow the interpreters to finish saying what I've just said. Remember to speak slowly. So today we're focusing on Pleasant Street and what we aim to be a safer and slower Pleasant Street. So first we'll do some introductions, then a presentation. I'll speak to the purpose of the project and what we've heard so far, and then we'll get to the proposed changes. Along the way, at each location, I'll pause and we can have an opportunity for your input. We'd love to hear from you what you like about the proposed changes and any questions that you have. Great. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Jen. I am a planner in the transportation department, and I am the planner with this project, and I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Dan.
Hi, my name's Dan Merrow. I'm a professional engineer working in the same department with Jen. I'm here to review the plans and kind of make sure that everything is up to City of Boston standards.
Thank you, Dan. All right, so some of this will be review for those who joined us at our earlier meeting in December, but for those who are new, I would like to do a brief recap of the project goals and what we've done so far. So with this project, we are aiming to calm traffic speeds along Pleasant Street. And we're also aimed to make the crosswalks along Pleasant Street safer and better for people to cross, especially people who are biking and walking, kids, older adults, and people with disabilities. The area of the project is along Pleasant Street, and it will from East Cottage down to Sawyer. We can make changes along this whole stretch of Pleasant Street and all of its non-signalized intersections. We will not be making changes to the signalized intersection at Stoughton Street. That's currently outside the scope of this project. So at the transportation department, we our design process. What we do is we first make some observations of the street and how people are using it. We combine that with taking a deep look at the traffic data. We also want to be informed by your experiences. And so that's why we do as much as we can to reach out to you and to hear how you are using the street and what you're experiencing. And we combine all three of those inputs into a design proposal. And that's what we'll be showing with you today. So I mentioned one of those inputs is traffic data. We did collect data on Pleasant Street in October of last year. We collected the number of vehicles and their speeds at 3 different locations along the corridor. And at those locations, so that was where number of vehicles and speeds. And then in addition, at the East Cottage Street intersection with Pond, we also counted how many people were walking, biking, and driving, and how they were using that intersection. I'm just going to pause a little bit so the interpreters can catch up. Right, and another ingredient I mentioned was what we hear from you. And so what we've heard from you so far, we have heard via emails, phone calls. A lot of these came in after we sent out postcards to residents in the neighborhood. We also hosted a walking tour in October and a virtual meeting in December. And in addition to that, we have been having conversations with non-residential stakeholders, in particular with the Edward Everett School. These are some photographs from the walk that we did in October. And we heard a lot in each of those different events, and the key themes that emerged were that crosswalks all along Pleasant Street don't feel safe. There's often poor visibility for people crossing the street. And as a result of that, people didn't feel that drivers were always stopping for them. There was a perception that drivers were speeding and making fast turns, particularly the turns coming off of some of the side streets and onto Pleasant Street, and in particular at the East Cottage Street intersection. And finally, people said that they feel people are using Pleasant Street as a cut through, and that some of those drivers include those who are driving large trucks and duck boats and buses. So after that meeting in December, we conducted some engineering field work. So we observed arrival and dismissal at the Edward Everett Elementary School. And we also took field survey. This included, very importantly, noting the locations of different utilities that might preclude or shape the types of designs we're able to do. We then evaluated potential locations for interventions based on what our project goals were and also the priorities that you had shared. So without further ado, probably the moment you're waiting for, what are the proposed changes that we have in mind? So what I'll do is I'm going to walk through, first we'll do a zoom out of where we're considering changes, and then we'll discuss each one in more detail. So starting from the south, we're looking at some improvements to the crossing at the Edward Everett School. We then are looking at Morrill and Victoria Streets, at Mayfield Street, Willis and Taft Street, and then the East Cottage and Pond Street intersection. All right, so for each of these locations, I'm going to show you or speak a little bit to the conditions today, and then show you what we have in mind for possible changes. And after at each location, I'll then pause and we can hear some of your what you like and any questions you may have. So first, Edward Everett. So today, we've heard a lot about this crosswalk, both from residents as we were on our walk and also from the school principal and some of the teachers there. The curve of Pleasant Street at this location is such that visibility at the crossing can be pretty restricted, especially when there are school buses and parents who are stopping right very close to the crosswalk. And this we observed at arrival and at dismissal. And we've heard that that drivers can speed through this intersection or through this crosswalk without yielding to kids and their parents who are crossing. The principal and staff of the school often are out there at arrival and dismissal to try to facilitate crossing at this intersection, because they say that there are a good number of students who walk to the school. There's already a fair amount of the curb line around the school is already parking restricted, but those restrictions weren't always observed. We did see a number of cars parked there during arrival and dismissal time, and the principal trying to ask them to leave. So what we're proposing in this location is for a number of things. First, we are proposing to shift the location of this crosswalk a little bit further west and north. And this does a few things. One, it improves the sight lines and visibility. So drivers are more easily able to see when pedestrians are in the crosswalk. And we believe that that will help more drivers yield to pedestrians and result in less delay for people trying to cross the street. This also aligns with a secondary entrance to the school and produces a continuous curb line for buses to line up, whereas it was broken up before. We shared this design with the principal, and she actually kind of anticipated what we were going to be proposing and was very supportive of it. In addition to shifting the crosswalk, we're proposing that it be a raised crossing, and as well as that we would be building some curb extensions. And I'm going to quickly kind of show you some images to help you understand what those two different treatments look like. So raised crosswalks are at the same level as the sidewalk. They create a small change in an elevation as the drivers go over them, and that tends to slow drivers down and and the slowing down makes the drivers easier, more likely to see people crossing. Curb extensions also to increase the visibility of pedestrians because they shift people from being they shift people kind of out into the roadway while still protecting them, and that makes it easier for drivers to see people before they actually enter the road. Additionally, they shorten the crossing distance and by extending the sidewalk approximately 6 feet. So we think all of these interventions will help address the concerns that we heard at the school. They do, anytime that we are creating a curb extension, those are areas that we can't allow vehicles to be parked against for reasons that they would be blocking the one travel lane through. And so you can see that there are some minor changes to the areas that people would be able to be parking to be able to provide these benefits.
Hey,
So
Jen, can I ask a quick question?
yes, I was good lead in. I was just about to pause there. So thank you.
Serendipity. My name's Brayton and I live at 54 Pleasant Street. I was on the walk back in October, which I really enjoyed. So thank you for organizing that. But one of the things that I'm concerned about that I see a lot, especially during school pickup and drop off, is in front of the gas station where the proposed crosswalk is going. Folks will often park right on the sidewalk. I've seen, you know, at the busier times, up to 4 people just parked right on the sidewalk. And it can be really unsafe and inconvenient, especially when there's a lot of snow on the ground and there are people getting gas. It makes it just really difficult to, you know, cross that part of the street. So long story short, I was curious if you had observed that yourself when you were watching that part of the street or heard anything from the principal. And if you just have any, if you could add some color around that.
I can take care of that one, Jen. Hi, we did go out and observe, and we did see that while we were out there. The curb extension will give a little more room for people going around there, but I do hear your concern. Currently, I mean, we really can't do anything to stop people from parking on the sidewalk there because it kind of backs into the gas station at the same level. We can look into some possible treatment options, but the current design doesn't have anything that would prevent people from getting there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We can potentially add things like bollards or a raised curb to the back, but I don't know that for certain until we've looked at that, but those are some potential options for the back of curb there.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, just wanted to share my observation, and if you could take it into consideration, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, we did see that, and that is a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else has a question, please use the raise hand function where I don't remember. Jen.
Yes, your raised hand function should be, there should be a button that says reactions. And if you click on it, the raised hand button should be in there. Additionally, if you're on a phone, I believe if you press *9, that will raise your hand.
So we have some raised hands. I'm going to ask Michelle to go first.
Hi, Michelle, you are unmuted, but if you are talking, we cannot hear you.
Hello, yes, my name is Michelle. I live on Victoria Street, and I was curious, sometimes when trying to pull out onto Pleasant, either taking a left or a right, the visibility is pretty tricky, mostly because there is parking on either side of Pleasant. So just seeing, you know, past the parked cars can be quite difficult. I wasn't sure if there was something in place to try to have a solve for that.
Yes, we will be getting to Victoria Street a little later in the presentation, and you can see what our thoughts are for that. That should help your visibility problem.
Fantastic, thank you.
No problem.
I'm going to go to Bing next.
Hi there, Bing Broderick. I'm at 94 Pleasant Street, and I also went on the walk, and thank you very much for doing that. It was great. I guess my question about the placement of the crosswalk is largely used by people who are dropping their children. And right now, there's nowhere to drop your children where the children don't have to cross the pathway of the cars going in and out of the gas station. And I just want to raise that because I think it will cause problems, but just want to share it. Thanks.
Thank you, and noted.
All right, we looks like we did get another question in the chat from Jonathan. What will prevent people from stopping in the Everett crosswalk to drop off and pick up children?
The short answer to that is I can't stop people from parking wherever they want. It's just not possible without some sort of police enforcement. But this design makes it more difficult to do that and makes it so that hopefully there's more compliance and not people stopping in the crosswalk. I unfortunately can't, force people how to drive, and if they stop there, there's not a lot I can do that. The Everett, just to keep going on that, I noticed another question about crossing guards. I don't know if they have one all the time, but the couple of times I've been out there, they have had a crossing guard that has been able to keep people outside of the crosswalk.
Just to add to that, I think the first time we did observations, the previous crossing guard had retired or left. So they were without a crossing guard for some period of time, but the more recent times we've been, there has been a police person present. We also received a question about thoughts about bike lanes for Pleasant Street.
This design will not be putting bike lanes on Pleasant Street at this time. Or there is no plans for bike lanes as part of this design, I guess is what I should say.
I will say that it is we believe that this design, and we'll get through the other intersections as well, but altogether, these designs should slow down vehicular traffic on Pleasant Street and make it a much more pleasant place to be riding. There was a follow-up question. What about the bike symbols that are like share the road lanes?
Those symbols are called sharrows. They're little chevrons with bikes underneath them. And you can actually see there's a few of them on the street right now. They don't actually end up doing anything, and they don't legally mean anything. And once people get used to them, they just ignore them. We don't use them as a general paint thing that we do in the city, except in very specific instances, which this is not.
All right, I want to make sure that we do get through the rest of the different locations that we're looking at. So I'm going to move on. But again, once we move through everything, we're happy to take further questions about anything that we've already went through. So let's move to Morrill and Victoria Streets. All right, so Morrill and Victoria are a pair of roads that do not align exactly. They are a place that we heard from people about poor visibility for people crossing the one crosswalk that exists that's aligned with Victoria Street. This crosswalk does not have a ramp at the west end of it. It kind of spits you into some grassy area. And so that, of course, is an issue in addition to the concerns about visibility. So for those reasons, people were suggesting to us at the previous meeting and during the walk that this might be a good location for a raised crosswalk. And that is what our proposal aims to provide. So a similar type treatment to what I discussed previously. In addition, we could build curb extensions to shorten the crossing distance, both across Morrill and across Pleasant. And I think, so that would be, we'd be shifting the crosswalk also further north. The reason for that is the existing crosswalk, the difference in grade between the roadway and the sidewalk was high, that making an ADA accessible ramp would be difficult. And we thought about aligning the crosswalk somewhat in the middle, but I believe that would spit you into a tree, which seemed ill-advised. So we felt like the shift further north would help align with pedestrian desire lines and provide a safe and accessible crossing. I think that hits everything, all the changes there. To again, similar to before, anywhere that there is a curb extension to provide that visibility, there would need to be restrictions in parking. Of course, there are already some restrictions, so the cumulative impact is not that high. I'll pause there, and I already see that we have one raised hand. So Jonathan.
Hi, I live at 18 Victoria Street, right next to Michelle and her family. And I've been here since October of '83, and I've quite often seen Pleasant Street as sort of a speedway. There have been accidents because cars will usually park very close to the corner of Victoria Street, especially on Sunday. And I stop at the stop sign, but I also always have to stop a second time to make sure that I can see both ways in order to turn onto Pleasant Street.
I think your question is about visibility there.
Right.
So people are parking illegally close to the corner of Victoria and Pleasant Street. Is that correct?
Right. And in the past, they've had to take away one parking space because it used to be legal to park very close to the corner, and accidents happened. I was involved in one of them where I nosed my car out, and a car zooming along Pleasant Street grazed my front bumper.
Yep. So what we can do as part of this, we don't want to restrict any more parking than we have to. Generally, that doesn't go well. But you already have the space restricted south of the intersection. It's just not reinforced. So an option that we have is daylighting, where we put paint and flex posts in the street to prevent people from parking in that area. And it makes it much easier. Well, makes it so people follow the restrictions better and gives you the sight lines that you need there.
Yeah, I don't want to take away any parking because parking is bad enough as it is. Thanks to the residential parking on neighboring streets, Victoria Street is almost impossible to park on at night. You go away, you come back, and you have to park several streets away.
Sure. So just to reiterate here, this daylighting wouldn't take any additional parking. You guys already have the restriction. It would just reinforce the restriction that is currently there, so that people won't park there and prevent the sight lines that you need to get out of Victoria Street. Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Jonathan. I do see another question from Heidi. Will any of the street trees be affected with these updates?
We do not want to touch any street trees, and we are going out of our way to make sure that we do not come close to street trees. Everybody loves street trees. We love street trees, unless it is an absolute paramount to safety, which none of these are. We do not want to touch them.
Excellent. And then there is a question from James. Am I right in interpreting that the curb extensions here can include green space instead of just concrete?
That is our current plan. There's already grass strips along this road, so we are just widening them a little bit. We would much prefer there to be grass here as well.
And then finally, a question from Raheem. How can we as neighbors get together and get resident parking on all of our streets? That is a question that is outside the scope of this project. I don't know that I'm have the most up-to-date information on the status of resident permit parking. I believe requests were on hold last that I heard. But Jen, do you know anything different than that?
I'm just looking for quick clarification, but again, we can't do that as part of this, and I believe it's through your Office of Neighborhood Services to get things like that pushed forward.
Yes, and I could certainly we'll take still as far as we know it's still on hold, but we'll definitely take a ask again and see if there's any, if we hear anything differently, we'll certainly be in touch. With that, I'm not seeing any further questions about Morrill and Victoria, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next intersection. And again, we can always return later. All right, so the next is Mayfield Street. So today there are crosswalks on all 4 legs of the Mayfield Street intersection. At the same time, none of the ramps are compliant with ADA accessibility. In addition, residents raise concerns about motor vehicles not slowing down at this intersection. And in fact, we heard a few times that this was sort of the spot where people started speeding up, I think on their way heading southward, and that on-street parking can block the visibility of pedestrians intending to cross. There are some existing parking restrictions, but again, as we've discussed, sometimes those aren't always observed. So here's what we're proposing at Mayfield Street. Here we are hoping to build some curb extensions similar to the locations we just discussed. We are not proposing to raise these crossings. There's a few reasons to this. Dan could probably say it all better, but one, we would not do 2 raised crossings in a row. And Dan, maybe you can speak a little bit more to exactly why that is. But if we only did one of them, there would not be safety benefits for the other one. And my understanding is when we looked at the survey for this location, it wouldn't be or very easy to create a whole raised intersection. But Dan, I'm sure I butchered some of that, so if you could speak a little bit more to that.
Sure. Generally correct.
Right.
A raised intersection did not seem feasible when we looked at this intersection. That's our only raised option. The next best option is daylighting, which is shown here. This will significantly narrow the roadway, making it both easier for pedestrians to cross and to see pedestrians in the area. We also have it bookended by raised crossings, 1 block south and 1 block north. So we weren't nearly as worried about the speeds here with the additional proposed changes.
Thank you, Dan. This does add the potential for additional green space, similar to earlier. And we would be, of course, installing ADA compliant ramps. I believe that's all I wanted to mention at this intersection, but I don't see any hands yet, but I'll pause for a moment and see if anyone has questions. Oh, I realize I do have one more slide with the parking restrictions we would need around these curb extensions, which are fairly close to what's already out there today. Some organizing in the chat, but not questions. So I'm gonna continue on to our next intersection. All right, so here we are, Willis and Taft Streets, configured fairly similar to the intersections we already went over further north. Further south. But at Willis and Taft, we do not have existing crosswalks at all. There are some ramps, but they're not ADA compliant. And here, residents had raised concerns that there really weren't many opportunities to cross Pleasant Street between Mayfield and East Cottage. And Willis and Taft are approximately at the in between those 2 different existing crossings. So this seemed like a great location to add another opportunity to cross, and so that's what we have done. With this proposal, we would be adding a raised crossing. We aligning it to Willis Street. we actually have two different options here. They're fairly similar, but I'll speak to some of their differences as well. Both would have the crossing in this location and would build curb extensions to, again, shorten the crossing distances and improve visibility. And both do, require the same type of parking restrictions around the curb extensions. The second option stretches that extension all the way down to Taft Street and also builds an additional curb extension kind of mirroring it south of Taft. And here you can see the parking restrictions that would be needed. And between the two, there's not much difference in terms of the parking restrictions. Option B does provide that curb extension south of Taft. It has a bit more planting area, and it also would do a little bit more to discourage vehicles from parking in this in the area between the raised crossing and Taft Street. That would be illegal to park there because we would be restricting it, but their option B would probably have greater compliance. So I am seeing a question from William. Feel free to unmute.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. So I had a question about some of the curb extensions. Just, it seems like, are they meant to simply, some of them I can understand, but other ones are coming in a direction where people, like I guess on option A, the one that's most north, people would be turning potentially right onto Willis. Is that curb extension there just to give people more visibility to the pedestrians?
That curb extension is twofold. One, yes, it does that. And two, it's a requirement by our Public Works Department that it aligns with the curb south of it on the far side of the intersection. Thank you, Jen. If we have a bump out on one side, we need to have the gentle curve that we do on the far side out to that width so that they match. So yes, it gives you better safety benefits, but also it's a requirement from Public Works.
For similar reasons, I guess in option B would be more aligned with what probably Public Works would like to see from us. Is that the case, Dan?
They have no horse in this race. They're fine with either of them. They both meet their standards. But that is why there is the bump out on the south side of the far one too, because again, you have to match the curb line on the other side of the intersection for safety, for plowing, for many reasons for our Public Works.
Seeing a lot of votes. Looks like B is getting a lot of love, but I also see a hand raised from Aaron. Feel free to unmute.
Hi, this is actually Jackie, Aaron's wife. This is actually in front of my house, and so I can see both of these options play out in real time. And I love particularly the intersection, it being there in general. I will say this would take away probably 3 parking spaces as they're actually used. And I would probably, if it's possible, prefer on the other side of Willis, on the north side of Willis, because there's a very fast traffic that comes off of House Street. People kind of whip out, and there's a lot of almost near accidents that happen off of House Street all the time. There's always horns beeping on this part of Pleasant from people trying to like whip around and get out, and it maybe could help with safe transition from the side street. Thank you.
Thank you. There wasn't a question there, correct? That was more of a statement. Is that correct? Oh, you are muted again. Let me just unmute you once more just to make sure I didn't ignore you.
No, there's no question, just a suggestion because I live right here and I can see the
Understood.
parking implications. Thank you.
We will certainly look at that.
So see a question from Ray. Any chance of changing the direction of House Street?
Not as part of this project. No. That requires a lot more everybody on board for something like that. And it would be out of the extent of slowing Pleasant Street.
Thanks, Dan. I'm not seeing any further questions on this one, so I'm going to move on. But again, happy to return later on. And here we are at the terminus of our project, East Cottage at Pond in Pleasant. So we heard probably the most about this location, I would say, at our walk. It has a skewed geometric configuration. We actually went back in time or at some old maps, and it seems to have been this way since it was built, perhaps. So this isn't new, but it is definitely, we've noted, a problem for a lot of people. Currently there are crosswalks at 3 legs of this intersection, and there's also a pedestrian refuge island in the west side of the East Cottage Street approach. Many of the ramps are not compliant. And what we heard most of all is concerns about drivers coming down East Cottage and not complying with the stop sign and taking this turn onto Pleasant at fast speeds. And also about other drivers kind of speeding through the pretty wide intersection as well. So this was definitely a pain point that we heard about. And so in this location, it's made a little bit complex by the geometry of the intersection and how much roadway space there is. So I'm going to walk you through what we're proposing. Okay, so first of all, one thing I should note here as you're looking at this plan is that in this location, we will be working with we call like temporary materials. So with like flex posts and paint, there are not engineered built components that are changing the curb line. The reason for this is that we really heard both on the walk and in December at the virtual meeting, the need for a quicker intervention to slow traffic speeds and improve pedestrian safety. And we felt like to be able to provide the safety with constructed materials was going to be outside the budget of this project. In addition, there was going to be questions about what all of this additional space, how it would be used, and whether, because it's city-owned roadway, whether the Parks Department or someone in the city would be able to maintain that space, what it would look like. Just a lot of longer-term questions that weren't going to be answered in the timeline you all wanted to see in terms of safety improvements. So what we are proposing to do here is so I'm going to take this starting at probably the biggest problem point over here on the west side of the intersection. Here we're trying to simplify the intersection to taper it into just one lane. And we will do that with flex posts and with striping. And that significantly shortens the crossing distance. It also improves by preventing vehicles from parking in the spaces very close to the intersection. That's going to help improve the visibility of people crossing here. So now moving towards the south, we're doing a similar treatment where we're going to be, restricting parking and in that area very close to the crosswalk, which is also in effect shortening the crossing distance. You'll see kind of yellow and black striped symbol here, and that would be a slow turn wedge. So that's going to, in addition to these flex posts, it's going to discourage people driving from not stopping at that stop sign and taking that turn quickly and cutting off the corner. Further, now heading to the east side, again, some kind of tightening up of that crosswalk to shorten the distances there. Another turn wedge to prevent the cars from kind of taking this S really quickly. And then, of course, up here you see, so one of the things we should say is that we've kind of analyzed this, the movements of vehicles, what kind of space they would need to actually make this S turn and to make it around onto Pond Street going north. And this is sufficient space for those movements. And so we've taken the space that was not needed and with flex posts will prevent people from using that area or vehicles from using that area. Now, how people choose to use that area is kind of a question that can be decided. Our short-term fix would be this would be sufficient, we believe, to slow the speeding and the fast turns and make it a lot safer for people walking. And then we'll kind of set up us as a city and the neighbors to kind of have conversations about what happens in that space later on. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm sure there's lots of questions, and I'm already seeing some of the chat, so I'm going to scroll up and see what we got.
Please feel free to raise your hand if you would like to voice your question.
Thank you, Dan. I see a question about, okay, we'll go with Cody.
Hey there. Quick question. I live at the intersection of Pleasant and House Street. And as has already been mentioned, cars fly through there. They don't respect the stop sign. They turn right. And also, having driven through there a couple of times, it's really difficult to do that because of the parked cars on either side. I'm just wondering if there's been any talk about daylighting that intersection. There's parking restrictions on either side on Pleasant Street, but people park there anyways, pretty much 24/7. So I'm just wondering, it wasn't in this presentation, but have you guys talked about potentially daylighting that?
We were not looking to do that originally, trying to be sensitive to parking issues. If that is something that people would be interested in, we can certainly look into daylighting House Street as well.
Right. Looks like Mead has his hand up. Mead, oh, there you go.
Hi, yes, Mead. I live on East Cottage Street. I actually just have an echo of kind of the last question. As someone who walks up and down Pleasant Street like twice a day with a dog, I would actually say the Howes Pleasant Street intersection is probably one of the most dangerous. And for that specific reason that I think you're technically not supposed to, park within a certain amount of feet at the the stop sign on Howes, but people do it anyway. And obviously people coming from Dorchester to Pleasant Street are just flying down that road. And so I would just second the idea that Howes Street, that literally on Howes Street, to provide visibility for pedestrians crossing Howes Street is something that really needs to be looked at.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Did that, yeah. Kara. Kara, I think you're still muted.
I was talking away there for a minute. Okay, thank you. I was very excited to see this intersection at East Cottage and Pond Street. after seeing all the previous ones because they were so beautiful. And this one leaves me with a lot of concerns. Are the temporary plastic bollards being put in? You said so we could get to address the safety issues quicker. So it's not a funding issue. Is it like, will these be done then much sooner than the rest of the street? Because bollards tend to get run over and damaged, and we would have to rely on the city to maintain them, which is not realistic. You just never know with budgeting issues and things like that. Something more permanent is really required at this most dangerous intersection of the entire street. I just don't see this either looking nice or being sustainable, because they're going to get hit and damaged and plastic. And but my second question is on Pond Street. So any kids or families coming from the Edison Green sort of side of the neighborhood to get to the park have to cross these three like crosswalks, a roundabout way to get there. And there is a gate to the park on Pond Street, sort of facing Edison Green. Could there be a crosswalk there so kids are going to cross there anyway? And that's right where Pond Street, the cars really get flying as they head towards Columbia Road, and a little kid darting out of the gate that exists in the playground to cross the street to get to their side of the neighborhood. I don't see a lot of kids taking the time or energy to make the big loop to get around safely. That's mine.
Sure. So there's a lot to unpack there. So
Sorry.
I apologize. I know people have feelings about this one. This is a big intersection. This is what people want to see. So I apologize if I miss something in there, but I'm going to take a stab at answering your question. One, as you noted, this is a big intersection. We have this large tan area. You can see all the space that we can take away from this intersection. We don't have something that we can put there right now that wouldn't just be a big pile of concrete. Parks is not interested in taking over that land currently, nor do we have something to figure out what could actually go there and what we could actually build there. So without knowing exactly what we want to or what we can build in that intersection until we have further discussions with parks and the surrounding people, we don't want to do built options here because it will either just be rebuilt later or will not be good. You don't want to switch a pile of asphalt for a pile of concrete. It's also not good. So that being said, we move to our second option, which is the paint and flex post option, which we have here. Paint and flex post is easier and faster. We do not have the timeline yet, so I cannot tell you exactly when this will go in. I'd like to think that it will be sooner than the rest of it, but I can't confirm that right now. And as for the flex posts, we do check them quarterly. They will be put back if they are knocked down, and if there are serial offender flex posts, we may readjust the design to make sure that either the flex posts are moved so that they're not run over every other day, or actually that's really it. We can adjust the design as necessary at that point. I think that answered most of your questions.
Just as a quick addition to that, we have reached out to parks. We haven't yet been able to have a real conversation with them about what this would look like, but do know that that's something we're trying to advance that conversation. We just don't have.
We don't really think that that's going to. But we are trying. As to the other, I missed one thing, Kara, which was the crosswalk on the north side. Is we can look into that, but again, it will come at the cost of more parking spaces. This design, we have been cognizant in trying to minimize the parking loss. It is less than 10 spaces currently. We don't know exactly. It will shake out when we're done. But if we add another crosswalk, we can look into that, but it will come at the cost of more parking as well. All right, I'm gonna keep moving because we have a bunch more questions. Who's next, Jen?
I believe it's Dejana.
Hi, this is Diana. Yeah, I'm sorry, I joined this call a little bit late. So I was just wondering if we are putting these 4 raised crosswalks for sure, or is this just a proposition at this point?
The raised crosswalks that were shown are what we as the city would like to do. We're here to show them to you to see if there's any opposition to them. We have not heard that from you, so we will be moving forward with the designs of these raised crosswalks across Pleasant Street currently.
Great. And do you have a timeline for that? I'm sure this has been addressed. Again, sorry for joining later.
Jen will share a timeline at the end of the presentation, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, great. And one more question. I see that this is being recorded. Can we get the recording by any chance to our emails?
Yes.
There you go. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all for my questions.
Got it. Thank you. Now Raheem. You can unmute Raheem.
Yeah, I just want to voice my official support for the East Cottage little intersection there. It's a very bad. I drive through there every day, and it's crazy. Even I've run through the stop sign, of course, many times, just not paying attention. I'll admit it myself. That intersection is quite crazy. I live on Edison Green, by the way, and we get a lot of the downstream effects of people just whipping through the corner onto Edison Green because it's a cut through to Dot Ave. And we really need, in the future, obviously not in this project, something at that intersection as well. And I know there's a lot of concerns about parking. I'm concerned about that too. I'm on the road a lot for work. You know, my job, I advocate for working people who drive for a living as well. So I just want to throw it out there. If people are interested in getting like a community group talking about parking issues in the immediate neighborhood, obviously not at the expense of crosswalks or safety, but just to kind of put that together, just find me on Facebook and add me and message me. But the East Cottage intersection, I think, looks really good. I know a lot of people are against the flex post, but budget-wise, that's all we're going to get. You guys have worked really hard on this, and we appreciate that. So just officially, in summary, fully support the East Cottage intersection. It looks great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raheem. And just to throw that on too about the parking, we run into this issue every time we propose safety changes. There's a lot of parking in Boston, and I just wanted to let you guys know we do work very hard to minimize the parking loss especially in residential areas. But the city's approach is that pedestrian safety is more important than parking spaces at crosswalk locations. So we're going to do our very best to maintain the parking, but at certain places, safety does trump parking. I believe next we had Cody.
Hi there. Just one question / proposal for what to do with that big tan area. Have you guys thought about reaching out to Blue Bikes to see if we could get a year-round station there? Because right now there are 2 stations, one near the Ryan Playground on Dot Ave and then one further towards Edward Everett Square. But I believe they're both seasonal, and the season is extremely short. It's 70 degrees out today and they're still not up. And so I was wondering if there's a chance that we could maybe get a Blue Bike station in that tan area. Oh, and some bike parking. My bike got crushed by a snowplow this winter because I parked it too close. My fault, but still, it'd be nice to have some more of that available.
That sucks. But luckily I work just a few cubes down from Kim, and Jen can see her from her cube, and she runs all of our Blue Bikes. So we can certainly look into putting a station in that area. And to that point, these are, again, we are looking for feedback here. These designs aren't permanent. They are just the direction we want to go. On to Michael.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, guys. First, I really want to say thank you because one thing I think was stressed a lot of through a lot of our earlier discussions were we'd really like raised crosswalks and not a lot of the plastic things. And it looks like about 85% of this project is really appealing. And so I really appreciate the raised crosswalks and the bump outs and the minimization of plastic. I just wanted to say that I agree about, I almost feel like the intersection of House is kind of more critical than the Mayfield one personally. And I feel like if there was a crosswalk at Howe's and there was more attention paid there, people could use that to cross instead of that horrible East Cottage intersection, which would be much safer. That just might open up another option for people to cross at. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that at the major intersection, there has to be some compromises aesthetically. One idea for that space in front of the park is, I know in some areas of the city, there'll be like a large cobblestone area with like those metal stanchions with like the metal chain. That could be really attractive and just kind of create like a courtyard before the park and just sort of leave it as an empty sort of cobblestone area. That could be really attractive. And it wouldn't be plastic, but we'd have like, you know, steel stanchions with chain. I don't know, it's just an idea. But again, thank you for hearing us out and for making some really good choices for us.
Michael.
Yes, thank you for your ideal, Michael, and noted. On to Amy.
Yes. Sorry, I'm Ivan on my wife's computer. So I love the ideas, love where things are going. So my concern, and I think we haven't talked about this, so I'm not sure if I've heard anyone ask this, is we have a ton of units. I mean, you see what's going on down on the corner of Dot Ave and Crescent. Then you go down the street all the way, you know, you follow Pleasant all the way towards Freeport. And that's going to be a massive influx of people coming in to the neighborhood. So there's always, obviously, there's the concern that all of that overflow parking is going to cause, all that overflow of influx of people are going to cause parking concerns where we live. Like I heard someone, I don't have it, you know, many of us, especially those of us with children, don't have an option to not use our cars. And I come from New York City, where I lived this. And that is why I'm no longer there in New York City, because I just could not get home and not figure out how to get, you know, have to like go around for 10 minutes and then find a spot and then come all the way back to my house with my car. So parking is something that I think we have to maybe kind of consider. Someone had a great idea of maybe making diagonal spots to allow more people to park along Pleasant Street or along areas. But I do think that we don't know what this is going to look like, even if we don't do anything on Pleasant Street. We don't know what parking is going to look like in our neighborhood after all of these units go up and all of those people move in, who are mainly going to be renters. So they're not going to be showing up to these meetings. They are not going to be, you know, they're not really. So what I'm trying to say is, like, with that huge variable that everyone's waiting to see what happens once those buildings open up, I do think that we have an opportunity here to also maybe think about solving a future problem as well, while making our neighborhood safer to walk through concurrently. Like, we have an opportunity here to do something pretty cool. And I want to, you know, I just wanted to throw it out there that maybe there could be some ways in which we can increase our ability to park and then accommodate the influx of people that are going to be coming. Because I sat through one of those butters meetings and they're like, yeah, one spot for a unit. Yeah, but you know that there's going to be 3 college kids living in the unit, or post-college kids, each one with their own cars. And the other 2 cars are going to end up on the street. And it's going to push the traffic, the parking concerns all the way into the rest of the neighborhood. And I just want to call that out, that maybe we should also take this opportunity and maybe see if we can work with the city to increase that capacity. Let's try to solve a problem before it becomes Southie. Like, no one here, I think we all live where we live because we don't want to be we don't want to deal with what our counterparts in Southie have to deal with, where they're literally coming and parking over here and then Ubering it home because they can't find spots.
Thank you, Ivan.
Oops, sorry, I muted myself. Dahana, you are next.
Hi, this is actually Steve, Diana's husband. I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts. I know this is not an easy project or task to get anyone to pay attention to this or be motivated, but I will say, we're expecting our first child. We quite literally feel unsafe. We live like on Pleasant Street, right near the intersection of House. Sometimes I can't even cross the street. I was just walking outside right now. There's a car going 42 miles an hour down Pleasant Street, and a car trying to pull out from House for probably 30 seconds. They almost got in an accident, and I've never seen people drive like this in my life. I have no idea where people learned how to drive like this. It is a much bigger problem than I think anyone in the city even realizes. Like, to see it every day, it's just unbelievable. So I just wanted to thank you. I'm very supportive of all of this. Anything we can get at this point is helpful. And the urgency to get that timeline, sort of increased, I think would be helpful. Thank you.
We are here to make this street a safer place for you. So we'll do the best that we can.
Yeah. Jonathan. I think you need to unmute.
Did you unmute someone, Jen?
Oh, you're asked to mute.
One thing I've seen over the past several years is that developers will approach the city with a proposal for a big development, and they'll schmooze the city and just say, oh, we don't need to build a lot of parking spaces. People don't want to own a car in the city. They'll ride bicycles, they'll take Uber, Lyft, they'll do whatever. So then you get a development which has one space per unit. And then all of a sudden this couple moves in and they've got to go out of town to see clients. They want to go to the store and they can't get there by Uber, Lyft. They want to go see their parents in another state. And you're going to wind up with two cars. And yeah, maybe they can buy another space in the garage if available, but they're going to park on the street. So we really have to consider parking on this and other issues. Yeah, I agree with Michael Keeney that this isn't about parking, but parking is sort of an inescapable part of this whole debate.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. On to Sandra.
Sandra, feel free to unmute.
Hey there. Sorry, I thought I already unmuted. Am I unmuted now?
You are all set.
Great. I'm Sandra Libby. I'm the playground planner with the DCR, and we're responsible for some of the maintenance, not the daily maintenance, but the maintenance of the equipment on the and working. I just think that you guys have done a very good job. You've thought about, there's so many different factors that you're factoring in and trying to, so I just wanted to say kudos. You've really thought this through a lot. And I hear you that you really wanted to talk about the park. And I just am available to help to instigate the meeting about the playground area and the interfacing open space that you were talking about. So I'm certain we can arrange a meeting soon if you'd like to do that.
Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate that. And I don't see any other hands raised. There are, oh, I see a physical hand raised. Ray, would you like to unmute? I think, sorry, you looked like you unmuted and then it muted again. I apologize.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Yes, I want to underline everything that people have been saying about, the problem on Pleasant Street has been a very dangerous situation for many of us. I've been hit by a car twice there. And, we all want to be able to safely go to our destinations, obviously. And so, what you're doing is really, really going to save a life. I know that for a fact.
And the other thing that I just wanted to mention is I like how from East Cottage onto Pleasant, that it looks like from the design that you're straightening that out a little bit. Is that what I'm viewing?
That is the plan. The closer to I aim to get 90-degree corners. You get a lot more compliant to stopping that way instead of a wide intersection, and it makes it a little more difficult to kind of take the turn at speed along with the narrowing of the roadway.
That's awesome, because that has really been one of the major issues with us trying to cross that street. When people are flying by, they're not even stopping. I mean, I've seen people go 30 miles an hour, and that's pretty damn fast going around that corner. So anyway, I do appreciate you doing something to make that so that people have to slow down at the very least and hopefully stop. But if they don't, at least they're not going to be plowing through at 30, 40 miles an hour. So thank you so much.
Honestly, that's a lot of my job, making people have to slow down. That's how we make the streets safe. So,
well, you're doing a great job. Thank you again.
On to Tony.
Hi. Thanks so much for the presentation. I previously know that discussion around bike specific lanes was talked about, and it doesn't seem like there's that much room on the road unless we get rid of a lane of parking. But is there any way or any plan to put down like markers on the road that indicate it is a shared space? Because there are many difficult and combative automobile drivers at times, and I just want to make sure that it's understood that it is a shared space and that the design of the road is meant for both car and bike to be in the same lane.
I hear you, because again, yes, this is meant for them to be in the same lane, and you're looking for a little reinforcement. Generally, we don't do sharrows in something like this. I can ask around and look into that. I cannot promise it because I want to make sure that we maintain the same things throughout the city. But I do hear what you're saying. So my answer is a resounding maybe, but I hear you and I will look into that.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to turn over to the chat and see if there are any questions that came in there that we didn't address. I see one from James about, and I believe this is in reference to East Cottage and Pond Street, about the possibility of raising the crosswalk across Pleasant Street.
Sorry, could you say that again, Jen?
Yes. Oh, no problem. About the possibility of, I believe it's like raising the crosswalk across Pleasant Street at the East Cottage Pond Street location.
Again, that falls into, we're not ready to do full construction at this intersection, because if we did a raised crossing there, it would lead to changes that might not meet what we're doing on the other side. So we are avoiding construction changes here for now at this intersection.
Thanks, Dan. Ray had asked, what does daylighting mean? You can probably say that most quickly, Dan.
Sure. Daylighting, you can see on the bottom. Jen, can you point at one? Go to the right one that's by itself. A little more right. Yeah, there you go, that one. Daylighting, you can see right there, it is a little area striped as wide as a car, about 20 feet long. We put a couple flex posts in it, and it is just to help reinforce areas that you are not allowed to park in. We're not changing parking restrictions. We just put it there to make it difficult to park in and provide better lines of sight to pedestrians crossing the crosswalk and maybe people coming out of side streets as well.
Stan. We also had a question from Matt. Explain the simplify intersection. He's referencing
Sure.
this.
You look at this intersection when you go out there, it's just a big expanse of pavement. When you have a big expanse of pavement, people just make up their own rules. We need to have it tighter, and we need to have something that is legible and easier to follow. providing lane-sized areas allows people to really understand where they're supposed to be and who has right-of-way where.
Thank you, Dan. We had a question from Kara. Could they, which I think means that the flex posts, be at least permanent posts like concrete or large planters?
I can't put large planters or concrete there. It then becomes a danger to vehicles, and it's not something that we do in the city currently.
Stand.
Additionally, we have nobody who will maintain planters or large concrete structures, unfortunately.
Great. Looks like Dina had a similar question. Do permanent fixtures cause any possible safety issue for traffic? Although I suppose that, I imagine that also refers to the flex posts, but Dina, please feel free to unmute if you have if I misinterpreted your question.
Flex posts do not block line of sight. They're about 3 feet tall and they're about 4 inches wide. You can see by them and you can see them very easily.
Scrolling through. Sorry, we got a lot going on in the chat.
I did write in the chat, Jen, that we might not be able to get to all the questions in there because I know we do have to wrap up, but that we will be reading them and any comments made there will be considered just as much as the ones that we discussed here.
Thank you, Dan. All right, so on that, I do have a couple more slides just about the next steps and schedule that I'll click to now. Scroll ahead. Oh, nope. Next steps for Pleasant Street. All right. So here we are in spring 2022. We are now going to first download the entire chat and make sure we have read through everything that's come in, because I know I haven't seen everything. We're going to make adjustments based on your feedback. And then in the summer through the fall, we'll be collaborating with other departments and other agencies on the design. The transportation department never works alone. We're always in collaboration with Public Works and in this case, like parks, etc. We're going to be sharing updates with you as we go along. And the intent, would then be to come back with final designs, and then the aim is for construction in sometime in 2023. So wanted to let you know that you're welcome to share thoughts, something that occurs to you after this meeting ends. Please feel free to send comments to this email address, pleasant.street@boston.gov. It'll go to Dan and me. You're also welcome to visit the project website. There you can also sign up for the mailing list. Although actually, if anyone who is logged in to the Zoom, you've had to put your email there. So all of those emails will add to the list. And we'll be sure to keep that list posted on updates as they come along. I think that's all we got for tonight. So thank you so much for joining us, for taking time out of this beautiful day to be with us on Zoom. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you again when we come back again with more finalized plans. Right.